have Mr. Gregory Moore of the Southern Intercollegiate Athletic Conference. We thank them both for joining us, and I know it is a rainy day, but we are here live. Welcome to the show.
Washington, D.C. always has a depth of sunshine that the rain can never snuff out.
Well, thank you, Dr. West and Mr. Moore. Thank you for being here with us.
It's great to be here.
You know, one of the things that Dr. West, I've actually been trying to reach out to you to talk about the poverty tour. Where do we stand right now? I mean, we've talked, I'm sure, in the Congressional Black Caucus and the sessions about education, about economics, about unemployment rates. Where are we headed next?
Well, as you know, it's just too much suffering, too much poverty. Brother Tavis came up with the idea of the poverty tour. It was a magnificent 18-city, 9-state, 7-day movement. Just a matter of fact, trying to cast a limelight on the precious humanity and resiliency of our poor brothers and sisters of all color, even though they are disproportionately black and brown and red.
Mr. Moore, you mentioned how we can leverage the sports community. We can leverage some of our African-American young men into addressing the issue of poverty and unemployment.
Yeah, that's important. I mean, when you look at our schools in the SIAC, we have 13 black colleges located throughout the southeastern United States. Albany State, Fort Valley, Morehouse, Tuskegee. If you look at the poverty rate, it's 15.1%, and you look at where our schools are located, they're all in communities that are overwhelmingly black and poor. Tuskegee, 10,000 people, 90% black, 40% poverty. Fort Valley, 37.6% poverty. Albany, 30% poverty. So my thinking is that when you see all these machinations involving all these schools, changing conferences, and an effort to exercise dominion and control over their television revenues, we got to remember all that money that's generated by the SEC is $1 billion. The contract with the ACC is $1.6 billion. The contract that the Pac-10 just announced was $3 billion. 95% of that money is distributed to the member institutions, cash distribution. And what they do in those communities is where they're located is build structures, stadiums, libraries, scholarships. So if ESPN were to give me $1 billion, just imagine the amount of economic development and revitalization that could take place in the poorest, most rural communities in the southeast United States.
Dr. West, as you know, we're not only looking for unemployment in those communities where there's a limited amount of education, whereas, you know, a lack of college degrees, a lack of high school diplomas, but we're also seeing unemployment for those who have master's degrees and even PhDs. So how are we addressing unemployment on a global level and regardless of the socioeconomic status?
Well, it certainly is a global phenomenon. There's a lot of competition. I think Brother Barack Obama's Jobs Creation Act is a step in the right direction in terms of accenting the centrality of quality jobs that need to be created. I just think we just need more push. I think we need more effort. We need to make it a higher priority. I wish it actually had been done 2.5 years ago, as opposed to now in the campaign context. But it's a matter of fundamental pushing, a matter of priority.
What do we think is next? We're up on a campaign 2012. Where are we headed and where does the country need to go as we're looking to elect our next president, or whether or not our President Barack Obama will be our next president?
Well, I'm pretty sure he's going to win, but we've got, I think, a very vicious right wing that's trying to tell a lot of lies about it. They don't have any quality candidates. I don't think even Rick Perry is going to be a quality candidate. But I think beyond that, we have to put pressure on our dear president himself so that he displaces his economic team too tied to Wall Street and has an economic team fundamentally tied to Main Street, be it Tuskegee, be it south side of Chicago, be it east side of Los Angeles, or be it in Houston or Chicago or Detroit.
Mr. Moore, you mentioned how many of our historically black colleges are in communities where we're seeing desperate situations, we're seeing foreclosure rates, we're seeing, dropout rates that are disproportionate, especially for African American males. Congressman Carson mentioned a few moments ago how we're looking at potentially 50% oftentimes in our urban environments of dropout rates. What are we doing to address those issues?
Well, what are our schools doing?
Yes.
Well, our schools are on the front lines of fighting poverty. When you look at poverty in this country, you got 15% living in poverty, up from 13% 10 years ago. Out of that 15%, only 2.5% all have jobs. As you know, there's a relationship between how much money you earn and how much education you get. So you look at what our schools doing. We're on the front lines fighting poverty, because what are our schools doing in the most underserved communities, providing folks who otherwise would not have them. So, there was a Wall Street Journal editorial about 6 months ago which raised questions about the relevancy of black colleges. I'm insulted by that question as it was raised because it's a loaded question. As long as our schools continue to be the option of first choice for underserved communities, and as long as the relationship between poverty and ethnicity in this country, there's always going to be a significant role for black colleges. Now, the census projected that there'll be 450 million Americans in 2050. We're projected to be an increased percentage of that pie. We're projected to be 15% of 450. So I always say, as long as the relationship between poverty and black folk and people of color in this country, I'm not going to be able to entertain the question.
I mean, I think it's important to keep in mind Wall Street raising that question every generation. 50 years ago, the same question is their way of trivializing black suffering and not recognizing that the Martin Luther King Jr.'s and so many others, Fannie Lou Hamer's going to come right out of those schools that reshape the democracy that they're a part of, but they don't even realize the source of it. So it's a matter of ignorance as well as interest in that regard. I know
Brother Russ, I got to point out that this young lady, is sandwiched between two alphabets.
06, brother?
Yeah.
Well, I see the brotherhood is here, and Dr. West, we thank you so much. And I know you have to go, but I did want to ask you one question about the pipeline to prison. You talk about the cradle pipeline to prison. What are we doing? Because we know that you mentioned Wall Street, the privatization of prisons, and what is going to be done with that, and how can we as a community take efforts in that?
I think the best thing we could do first is to read Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow. We need to be informed, we need to be inspired, we need to be illuminated. That book does that, and it calls for a new movement. And we all can play a role. We all can play a role, but we have to have a consciousness of the precious humanity of so many of our young brothers who are shifted off to prison, soft drugs offenses. 62% of them in the prison there because of drugs. Not one person on Wall Street persecuted or investigated because of their criminal activity, fraudulent behavior, market manipulation, insider trading. But Jamal gets caught with a crack bag, he's off to jail for 7 years. That's the hypocrisy. But Michelle Alexander tells that story in such a powerful way. But thank you so much for the work that you do on this.
Thank you for all the work that you do.
Very much so.
All right, thank you again. We'll have to have you back. Thank you again. And we are still here with Mr. Moore. We are at the Congressional Black Caucus 41st Annual Legislative Conference, and we are joined this afternoon. And Congresswoman Lee has joined us back for a moment. Okay, I think she left some things here, but Dr. West mentioned, talking about Wall Street, talking about the privatization of our prison systems. And we know that just because an African-American male or female, for that matter, graduates from college does not alleviate them from what we've seen with Detroit Davis. And as we walked and we saw on the television and in our communities, I am Detroit Davis. What are we doing in our colleges to enlighten our young people to know what they're really facing when they exit out?
If you look at our schools, we're doing a great job of raising awareness of this issue. Prison industrial complex. A lot of the intellectual material on that subject is coming out of our HBCUs. Since 1980, I think there was 500,000 people in the federal penitentiary in 1980. It's now 2.2 million. Majority of which are black and brown. So, our schools become distribution channels in communities that desperately need information of valuable information, not just to the students who attend our schools, but also to the members of the community who exist there who allow the interface with our programs.
When you talk about interfacing with the programs, what are some things in particular that the NCAA is working on right now, and some programs and some initiatives and action plans with some of its athletes to prepare them or to be actually mentors? Because one of the things we've heard throughout this conference is how mentorship is on. Now that they have been prepared and they're ready to become contributing members of our communities, how are we preparing them to also give back?
Well, I think the NCAA has done a good job in terms of launching several diversity and initiative programs. One of my predecessors, Robert Vowles, my former commissioner of the SIAC, he's working in the national office, but a lot of it has to come. They need to do more. They're doing something, but they need to do more. And in terms of diversifying the executive ranks of college sports, when we have 4 black commissioners in the country, about 80 commissioners, 4 black, and they just happen to be commissioners of historically black conferences.
We thank you so much for the work that you're doing, and we definitely would love to have you back because your insight into how we can use collegiate sports and using how many African American males we know are in basketball and football and are everyday working within their, along with going to school. Many of us might not believe that sports are a job, but if you probably can attest, it is a job. It is their second job, and so we would love to have you back and talk more about this, keep the discussion going, and how we can use sports to really address some of our issues.
Just let me know. Keep doing a great job.
Thank you again for joining us. And we are live from the Congressional Black Caucus 41st Annual Legislative Conference. We are live this afternoon, and we'll be right back. Stay tuned.